Todd Chrisley treated differently in prison wants big changes. Chrisley knows best reality star Todd Chrisley is speaking out more and more about his time in prison. He and his wife, Julie, were convicted on charges of tax evasion and bank fraud. They were sentenced to a combined term of 19 years behind bars. However, President Trump made their wishes come true and granted them a full and unconditional pardon last week. Now, Todd reveals that the prison system needs some major changes. Why does he think this? Keep reading to get all the details. Todd Chrisley wants major prison reform. Chrisley knows best star Todd Chrisley agreed to a press conference with his daughter, Savannah, on Friday. The interview took place in Nashville just a few days after he was released from a Florida prison. One of the things he discussed during the interview was how he was treated differently in prison than other inmates. He said, "This isn't all he said." Todd also alleges that he received better treatment than black men who were also incarcerated with him. He wants to bring awareness to the systemic problems that are found within prisons. Todd went on to say, he shared that they were denied programming and access to other things. Todd said that while he was in there, he was not denied these things, and that everyone should know why. He believes that this is the bigger picture that needs to be looked at within society as a whole. Everyone should be treated as one. Of course, he was alluding to the fact that he is white. However, he could have also been treated differently because he is a reality television star. What the men thought when he left. Todd Chrisley also noted that when he left prison after the pardon, there were 317 inmates currently there. He revealed how they all yelled at him not to forget them. Chrisley vows he will not forget them, and that is a promise. He, along with his family, plans to work toward getting big changes made within the prison system. Chase Chrisley has also already talked about injustices that occur within the prison system and how there needs to be major reform. Together, this will become something they continue to fight for and work toward change. From the marble floors of his Atlanta mansion to the cold, cracked linoleum of federal prison Camp Pensacola, Todd Chrisley's world had turned upside down. Gone were the designer suits, the imported cologne, and the perfectly styled coiffure. In their place, orange scrubs, harsh fluorescent lights, and a daily regimen that would have made even the most rigid Southern mama wince. But Todd wasn't just another inmate. From the moment he stepped foot behind bars, something felt different. "I don't belong here," he whispered to himself one morning as he stood in the cafeteria line, eyeing the powdered eggs with visible horror. Inmate numbers 47,293 through 19 was still every bit Todd Chrisley, reality TV patriarch, style aficionado, and self-declared keeper of Southern etiquette. And even in prison, he wasn't about to let anyone forget it. Word of his arrival had spread fast. Some inmates rolled their eyes. Others were amused. A few tried to cozy up, hoping to befriend the reality star and maybe score a shoutout on the outside. But for Todd, it was all suffocating. While others melted into the beige walls of routine, Todd found himself treated with a mix of curiosity and condescension. Guards seemed to scrutinize him more than the others, keeping him on a tight leash. He suspected they were waiting for him to break, to lose his cool, to deliver one of his signature bless your heart monologues and earn a punishment for sass. He couldn't shave with his favorite cream, couldn't moisturize with his expensive serums, and certainly couldn't curl up at night with Savannah on FaceTime. The limited contact with his family gnawed at him, especially when he heard rumors that Grayson was struggling and that Julie was having an even harder time at her facility. Still, Todd wasn't the type to quietly suffer. He began to take notes, literal, detailed notes, in a battered composition notebook that he'd scrounged from the prison library. It started as a diary, a cathartic place to vent. But slowly, it transformed into something more ambitious. Federal reform, a Chrisley perspective. He wrote about the lack of mental health resources, especially for inmates who had never had a prior record and were struggling to adjust. He noted the poor quality of the food and how it impacted morale. He detailed how certain inmates, particularly high-profile ones like himself, were monitored with a double standard, given less freedom, fewer privileges, and more restrictions out of concern for optics. Todd saw it as unfair and even cruel. "Fame doesn't make you dangerous," he scrawled one night. "It makes you visible." And in here, being visible can feel like a punishment all its own. Todd began talking to other inmates, gathering stories. There was Jerome, who hadn't seen his kids in 3 years because of the complicated visitation rules. There was Hector, a first-time offender who was trying to take online courses but couldn't get consistent access to the limited computer lab. And then there was old Donnie, who'd been in and out of the system for decades but had never been asked once about his mental health. The more Todd heard, the angrier he got, and the more purpose he found. He even launched what inmates jokingly called Chrisley's Corner, an unofficial prison support circle where men could come vent, tell their stories, and, if they dared, laugh about their lives behind bars. Todd, the reality TV dad once obsessed with matching throw pillows, was becoming something of a prison activist. "I might have come in here soft," he admitted during one session, "but trust me, gentlemen, I'm walking out with a cause." Of course, prison officials weren't thrilled. When they discovered the notebook, he was written up for documenting institutional procedures without approval. They moved him to a less desirable cell for a time and warned him against stirring up division. But that only fueled Todd's fire. He was already laying out plans for his post-prison campaign. A tell-all book, a podcast recorded from halfway house confinement, and, if he could swing it, an interview with Oprah or Anderson Cooper. "I will not be silent about this," he said firmly in a phone call with Savannah. "They think I'm just some spoiled reality star, but I'm coming for change. Real change." Savannah, never one to back down herself, vowed to amplify his voice. She began speaking publicly about the conditions her father faced, hinting at a bigger movement. The phrase Chrisley prison reform began circulating online, fueled by a wave of TikTokers and ex-fans turned advocates. Some mocked it, sure, but others listened. Todd even penned an open letter that somehow made its way to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. In it, he wrote, "Prison is supposed to be about rehabilitation, not humiliation. I went from a mansion to a cell, but I've found a new calling. And I won't stop until our system sees reform, not just for me, but for every man and woman serving time in silence." By the time his second year inside rolled around, things had shifted. He wasn't being treated worse anymore, just differently. Some guards gave him a wide berth, while others seemed oddly respectful. The administration couldn't ignore his growing platform. Still, Todd knew that prison wasn't the final chapter of his story. It was just the unexpected plot twist. When release day finally came, he walked out into the sunlight, not with tears, but with a grin. "I told y'all," he said to the cameras waiting outside, "you can put me in a cell, but you can't cage my spirit. Now let's go change this system, honey." And with that, Todd Chrisley, Southern gentleman, ex-con, and accidental reformer, stepped into the next season of his life. Not as a disgraced TV star, but as a man with a mission.